Okay, well, thank you for coming. My name's Jim Hare. I'm the product marketing manager for the Visual Studio brand at Microsoft, and it's just my pleasure to welcome all of you. A little bit about Mads and Nick. Nick is part of our engineering team. He's the dev lead for our diagnostics tools. One of the most popular features of Visual Studio 2026 is the new Copilot Profiler agent, which he's going to be talking about today. Mads Kristensen has been my partner for the last 3 years at VS Live. He and I pretty much traveled to most of these and started really reviving VS Live in terms of just getting more and more Microsoft people involved. And for the past year, Mads has been working on the Visual Studio 2026 release. So he is really the guy to thank when you look at everything across Visual Studio. Those are the gentlemen that you have speaking today. Gentlemen?
Good morning, everybody. It is an early morning, but glad to see you all here. It's wonderful. So thank you, Jim. There's a lot of cool things happening here at VS Live, and I'm really happy to be able to be here and to talk to you. And Nick and I, and we have a bunch more people from the team here. And as Jim was saying, we really want to talk to you and hear what you have to say and listen to your feedback. So we just released something last week. The first new version of Visual Studio in 4 years. Visual Studio 2026. How many people here have used it? Tried it, downloaded it? Like half the room? Third of the room? Okay. I'm extremely proud of this release. I've been on the team for 15 years, and I think this has been the best release we've ever done in terms of the feedback we've gotten, and it just feels better. I don't know what it is, and I hear this from the team. A lot of people tell me there's something different about this release. And it's hard to put your finger on exactly what it is. But let's rewind a little bit. So as Jim was mentioning, we've been working on this for about a year. And here's kind of what we want to do. What is it that the Visual Studio team is trying to achieve? Well, we want to drive success for our users by creating the most lovable experience for C# and C++ developers. And the key word here being lovable. Right? This is what we aim to do. We've been doing this. Nothing has changed. This is something we did. We've done this for years. It's been kind of our North Star, the things we want to move toward. We're going to continue that. Here's a different take on it that I kind of like. Imagine a world where C# and C++ developers are excited to start their day in Visual Studio. That's really what excites me, to be able to create excitement. And, getting up in the morning and know that you're going to go to work and you're going to, solve some problems, and you look forward to using Visual Studio every morning. That's the world I want to see if I can provide to as many people as possible. So I like this statement a little bit better because it touches on some of the feelings, I think, or the emotional part of why we're doing what we're doing. So something with 2026 that we're saying is, hey, this is for the professional developer. So I don't think we've ever come out and said exactly what is the role of Visual Studio in this world of all these other IDEs and editors and so on. How do we differentiate? And so something we've always been is the choice of the professional developer. And we're leaning into that. This is the way we're going. This is for people that get up in the morning, have to get their job done, don't have time to play around with all sorts of things. They're the professional developers. They're people like you. That's who we build Visual Studio for. So if we look back at what are the 3 things that we wanted to achieve with Visual Studio 2026 when we started talking about this new version, right? As I said, it's been 4 years, so it's been a long time coming. There were 3 things we wanted to do. One was performance. So you keep telling us year after year that performance has to be improved. And we've been doing a bunch of incremental changes that has improved performance on different things throughout the years. And it keeps getting better, but maybe too slow, right? And so we were like, okay, there are things we know we can do if we change some architectural things in Visual Studio, but they require like big architectural changes to do. So we were like, okay, if we're going to do a new version of Visual Studio, we're going to make those architectural changes so we can get that fast performance. The second one was the quality of life or the essential parts of what makes an IDE an IDE? How do we reduce all those paper cuts that you face every day? And the reason for this is like, when you use Visual Studio all day, every day, those small things, they become everything. And so it's really important that we have these smooth workflows, and sometimes we build features that, doesn't really serve a purpose other than put a smile on your face. We call them delighters. They're part of our everyday, part of our experience, part of our developer happiness, right? And that's what we really want to optimize for. We want to make you excited to go up to work in the morning using Visual Studio. And finally, we want to look at AI, of course. But we want to do it in a way that works for you. Okay, so this is not about saying, how do we take AI and just like throw it onto Visual Studio? And yeah, we fumbled a little bit, I think everybody did, because all of a sudden AI was everywhere. But we're thinking this, what do professional developers want? What do you need? And how does AI fit into that? Not the other way around. Right? We don't start with AI. We start with the problem, the things that we struggle with, the things that could be better. And if AI can solve that in a way that's optimal, then we use that. But before any of all this, we wanted to make sure that of all the stuff we did, we made sure that the stuff that you asked us to do was the things that we focused on first. And so in the last 12 months, we have fixed over 5,000 of your user-reported bugs. That's not the bugs that we open on ourselves. This is only bugs that were opened by you. And we've implemented over 300 feature requests. So 5,000 issues fixed. That's more than 23 per day. And it's more than one work day. And it's more than one feature request implemented per work day. This is quite staggering number. And what's really cool about this is that it's going up. This is not like a one-time thing. It's like the trend is going up. We're fixing more and more. I'd like to say that we're listening better than we were before. We're prioritizing getting this type of stuff done, removing those paper cuts, removing the things that stand in the way of your success, of your developer happiness. When we look at the product and what comes out of this, well, it comes from the very beginning when you start Visual Studio in the installer. When you install Visual Studio 2026 for the first time, and by the way, Visual Studio 2026, there's a lot of firsts. One of them being a new screen that you see in the installer asking, hey, do you want just to copy what you had working in Visual Studio 2022? Like what workloads did you have? What components? What settings? Even extensions? And use that and then just install that into 2026? That way you're up and going immediately, right? It installs everything you need, all your dependencies resolve, and you get to code immediately. That's pretty remarkable. Even like settings. So it all feels familiar once you start Visual Studio up after the installation. It's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what to do. I have everything I need. I can open my projects and they compile and everything is good. And I'm happy. Or you can do like a clean install. Right? Some people like that, and that's fine. And then there was the extensions. So for the first time, we have a version of Visual Studio that is compatible with the previous version of Visual Studio extensions. It's actually the other way around. It's like the extensions that were written for Visual Studio 2022 are forward compatible with 2026. It's the same thing, it's just a different direction. But that means that there's over 4,000 extensions available today. All your extensions that worked in 2022 works in 2026. And they are there on day one. So you have everything you need, all your business critical stuff, all your favorite color themes or whatever it is that you install from the marketplace is with you from the very beginning. This is one thing that often comes up as something that stops people from adopting Visual Studio. Like, oh, I can't get the new version because I don't have this and that extension. It's not ready yet. But that's gone because they're all ready. We also did the new UI. A lot of people have been very, very loud about they think that Visual Studio looked dated. It looked old. And so we've been working for 2 years on a new, modern, Fluent UI. And we added 11 new color themes. So you have the crisp lines. It's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, modern UI with all these different color themes. So you can, 11 new ones. So you can, get exactly the one you want and make Visual Studio feel like a home. And there's still, if these 11 are not enough or not the right one for you, there's some on the marketplace. You can install additional ones and you can create new ones. This is now easier than ever to create new color themes. And so we're going to have some information coming out on the blog on that soon, but it's absolutely fantastic. I just wrote a new color theme the other day for OLED screen. So it's a true black. So basically, if you have an OLED screen and you use a true black theme, it turns off the pixel. Right? So you really, if you're in a dark room, for instance, you get even less light in your face. So stuff like that is available and it's fun to play around with. But more importantly, it feels familiar. It feels like home. All your stuff is there. It looks the way you want it to look, all your settings, and you get to be productive from the get-go. Even the settings have been revamped. So now the settings are backed by a JSON file. It's a simple JSON file that lives somewhere, and it uses the new UI. It looks absolutely gorgeous. You can search, you can do all sorts of things. You can filter. You can say, only show me the settings where the default is changed. Or you can say, only show me settings that have to do with performance-related things. So you can filter, you can mix and match. You can even do settings that follow the repo or the solution. So you can say, okay, when I open this solution, I want the color theme to be the pink one. And for this solution over here, it should be like an orange one or whatever. So that when you have multiple Visual Studios open at the same time, you can very easily see which solution is loaded in which. And that's just all built into the new setting system. So that's very, very exciting, and I'm very happy that we finally have it here. This is something that's a long time coming too. I think we've worked on this for like, what do you think, Nick, like 2 years? The new unified settings, we call it. So very happy to see that. And I want to show you an example of what I mean by these quality of life things. So here's a thing you didn't know you wanted, and it's the line number margin. People, they complain, they say, why is the line number margin so wide? It takes up so that I can fill like, 5-digit wide in Visual Studio 2022. But I don't have that many code files that are like 5-digit, like that long, like 100,000 or 90,000 lines of code or whatever. So why is it that wide? And so we fixed that. So now it's only as wide as it needs to be to fit the numbers. So you get a little bit more vertical space. And this is just one of these little things that, I see people are like nodding. Yep, that makes sense. Yeah, did we need it? No, not really. But it's one of those small little things. And so when you obsess over details, you get to fix stuff like this. Performance. So this is the second thing. And this was very, very important. At least you keep telling us. So we really wanted to do something big this time. You might have noticed, and this came up when we ran the Insiders. We released the Visual Studio 2026 Insiders in September. So it was a public release. It's kind of a preview. The new preview is called Insiders. We renamed it. We wrote this. Best on Windows 11 with 64 gigs of RAM and 16 cores. And the world interpreted this as, these are the minimal system requirements. No. That's not what it says. It says best on. And so we changed it. Faster and more responsive than VS 2022 on the same hardware. We have the exact same system requirements as we did in Visual Studio 2019. Okay? Nothing has changed. However, it's much better at utilizing the hardware you've got. The more you throw at it, the faster it runs. And the conundrum was a little bit like, if we wrote our system requirements were 4 gigs of memory, which is the minimum requirements. Guess what? You go to your manager and says, hey, I need a new machine. I need 64 gigs of memory. And your manager's like, yeah, but you only need 4. And so, okay, we'll give you 16 then. So a lot of people actually had a hard time lobbying for getting more power on their machines. And so that was part of why we said this, is to give an incentive to get more beefier machines. And we run tests on this. There's a reason why 64, it's not like Visual Studio using more memory actually. But there's a different reason for why 64 is kind of a magical thing. What does this mean? So 16 cores, what Visual Studio used to do was you start it up and it would boot up .NET. It would do a bunch of stuff. Then it would start the shell, and then it would parse the solution, and it would load all your projects, and it would do all this in sequence. And we've been able now, because we re-architected things, to run things in parallel. And so now we sign you in at the same time we start parsing the solution, at the same time that we start painting the UI, at the same time that we're loading up the .NET framework, and so on and so forth. So the more cores you've got, the more we can parallelize out. And the least, and you'll have less competition from other processes that compete with Visual Studio. Like if you have, an email client open or whatever it is, right? Competing for your resources. The more cores you've got, the more Visual Studio will scale out and the faster it will be. We got, just in starting up, if you just start Visual Studio without loading any solution or anything, you should immediately see a 30% faster startup time. I want to say I'm going to show you a few charts. This is the first wave of the stuff we've been doing on performance. We're doubling down. So you're going to see a lot more in the updates that are following to Visual Studio 2026, that these numbers are going to improve. So this is just the first wave, but immediately you see a 30%. And that's great because that's something you can feel. Like 5% here, 2% there, you don't notice that. 30%, you'll notice. When we load a solution, we do that almost twice as fast. It's going to be rarer that you see the little box that says, that blocks the UI, that shows a little loader that loads all your 200 projects, for instance. That's going to be much rarer that you see that, because we parallelize all this stuff out and we run more stuff on the background threads. That's a huge win. And remember, solution load also has to do when you switch branches using Git, because it kind of loads the solution every time you switch a branch. So you're going to see that being snappier too. And then finally, the hang time or the freezes that we see in Visual Studio have been greatly reduced. When you do an action, Visual Studio sometimes freezes for like a second, 2 seconds, maybe 5 seconds, depending on what it is. Sometimes when we load solutions, it's loading and you can't click anything in Visual Studio. It's kind of frozen just for a little bit. Those have been reduced by over 50%, with a lot more to come. That is partly because of that, how we're dealing with garbage collection, because you have a lot of memory. These days, a lot of people have a lot of memory. If you have 64 gigs of memory, for instance, the way garbage collection works in Windows and in .NET changes its behavior quite a bit. And we can also dynamically create more. Is it heaps that we have? Like if we create dynamically now? So you can have, depending on how much memory you've got, we can give you more heaps. And so the garbage collection is much more efficient, which means it doesn't have to spend as much time doing those critical moments that might freeze the UI, because it's doing work on the UI thread to clean up. So that's one aspect. Another one is we've been able to take a bunch of stuff that was done on the UI thread and move to background threads and parallelize that out as well. So not only do you get a faster startup, faster solution, faster typing speeds, faster on all these different metrics, but you get a lot less hangs. You get a lot more responsiveness. And you feel this kind of lightweight. For the first time, maybe in 20 years, Visual Studio feels lightweight again. And with the new modern UI, it's pretty fantastic. It's a great feeling. It feels good in Visual Studio again. There's just something magical about it. Now here this is on this laptop. This is not a fancy laptop. This is a Surface Laptop 6, so it's a few years old. I did this. On the left side, I'm going to start up Visual Studio 2026. On the right side, I start up VS Code. VS Code is kind of known for being fast, right? Let's just take a look. That's the same time. Visual Studio now starts up as fast as VS Code. And as I said, this is just the first wave. And this is something people have noticed. Like you feel the difference. Like Steve here, especially when you working with large solutions, you see it. I work primarily in small solutions. I feel it too. So everybody wins here. It's not just for the big enterprise or whatever. It's everything. All projects, all solutions. So that was number 2, performance. Number 3, AI. And I know you hear a lot about AI, and some of you love it. Some of you are a little hesitant around it, and some people are like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. No matter where you are on the spectrum of, AI, I think we got something that should excite you. Because what we're doing here with the AI in Visual Studio is not to try to create a new paradigm, new things that you do, new workflows, new things you have to remember. Oh, now I have to change my behavior to use these new features. It's not that. It's the opposite. It's like, how do we augment the things that you already do in order to make you more effective, more efficient, upskill you, make you do things you weren't able to do before, make you reach farther, and kind of make the impossible possible. Sorry about the cliche there at the end, but that's really what it is. Things that you didn't know how to do before, all of a sudden you're able to do. And so all these AI assisted features, they work seamlessly in Visual Studio, enabling developers like Georgie here to be more productive and focused on higher value work. So let's take a closer look at what that could look like. So right from the beginning, we can now help with creating a plan out your work and jump right into coding. You can prompt it in chat and you'll get a clear, actionable plan. So here's an example. I want to create a time zone helper app to better understand my coworkers' working hours across different time zones. In agent mode, I prompt chat for help and get back a plan that is created and then executed step by step, keeping me updated as it completes each step successfully. The planning is in public preview today, so be sure you have planning enabled in your Copilot settings and try this out in VS 2026. So in the end, it validates my build, and now I have the beginnings of an app that would have taken me hours to get started with. With all the basic UI and all that might not be my strongest developer skill to create beautiful UI. But this is a hell of a starting point. But of course, building is not a one-time task. So development is continuous, and VS meets us where we are with inline code suggestions in the editor and agent mode always ready to help with larger changes. We also have a new test agent. Helps you write the unit tests that you were too busy writing, maybe. Helps you identify where you need more unit tests, that where your unit tests aren't sufficient, where your code coverage maybe is lacking. Oh yeah, because code coverage is now down from enterprise only to be in the pro and the community as well. So code coverage is now available to everybody. And so the agent can figure that out and understand how to improve your test harness. And it's absolutely remarkable in how it does that. The debugger, right? When we run into snags or simply want to investigate our code more deeply, VS gives us smarter ways to debug, from helping analyze exceptions that we run into to helping inspect our inline variables more efficiently. So back in my code base, I've set a breakpoint to investigate what happens when I delete a time zone from my app. I want to inspect my list of time zones to ensure that the item is removed as expected. And instead of hunting through all the items, I can ask Copilot for help. This makes inspecting variables so much quicker and easier, especially when we have hundreds of thousands of items to look through. It saves so much time. I was debugging anyway, and the help to make me a better debugger shows up as I'm debugging. Right? I don't have to change my behavior. My muscle memory stays the same, but I now have an option to be more effective. Other times, we might not know exactly what's wrong or how exactly to optimize. Performance tuning can be tricky, but that's where the profiler comes in. I want to invite Nik up to stage here. We had a little issue, Nik.
We did. Unfortunately, I had an awesome demo planned, and if you look at my computer right now, it says it can't connect because there's a Cloudflare outage. But I do want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the cool features that the Profiler agent can help you with. And so the first thing I want to kind of talk about is, why did we create the Profiler agent? My team's goal, or my team's charter, is to really help democratize diagnostics. We understand that, yes, you can catch exceptions and you can do easy sort of performance investigations where it's like, oh, instead of using a linked list, I should use, an array because it'll be faster. And we wanted to take that and we wanted to augment that workflow so that you can get into more and more difficult sort of optimizations, and anyone can do it. Again, we're trying to democratize diagnostics. And so what we ended up doing is we created this new profiler agent that can help you use the tools that are already in Visual Studio. It can help you run the profiler. It can help you generate benchmarks. It can help you run and analyze those benchmarks. It can go ahead and propose different optimizations for you to use on your code base. And one of the really key important things that I enforced with my team is that we didn't run this on any toy apps. Each and every app that we tested had to be real world code. Mads has already talked about kind of how we ran it on Visual Studio. We ran it on the libraries that we use. One of my favorite things is we run it on open source libraries from NuGet. And we've actually been able to take the profiler agent, run it on a bunch of these libraries, create benchmarks, do different optimizations, and then we've actually been able to submit it right back in for performance gains. And so some of my favorite libraries that we've done these performance optimizations on are like the nlog logging. I don't know if anyone uses nlog. We also did one for Seralog. And the demo that I was going to show you today was one that we did for CSV Helper, which is like, I don't know, 50th most popular package on NuGet. Helps you read and write CSV files. We've found multiple optimizations where we can both optimize reading and writing, and not just small performance gains. The small CSV file that we were writing here was going to result in a 15% performance gain. We've seen as much as 20 and 25% faster performance based on an optimization that the profiler agent was able to find in under 30 minutes. And that's the sort of power that helps you as professional developers get into the code and quickly make a huge impact.
Yeah, it's really, truly remarkable because we know that not a lot of people use the profile. And even if you do, like me, for instance, I can't go very deep. I'm kind of high level coding person. I don't go down to the metal and understand like WinDBG or anything like that. So when I ran the profiler in the past, it would show me, hey, here's the line of code that's slow. You're using a linked list. And I'm looking at that and be like, all right, let me make that a hash set. Run it again and see if that was better. But I don't really know if it's faster now. So I don't really get that much out of the profiler as it is able to actually help me with. And so that's that missing piece, right? We have the tools that let you take step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to really optimize things. But I was not personally really able to do step 6 and 7 because I'm not low level enough. And so the AI comes in and basically upskills me. Right? It helps me make those things that I was not able to do. And it does it in a way that's natural. I don't have to change my behavior. Right? It's right there. The work I'm already doing now, I'm just better at it. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
It's awesome. So yeah, so I think apparently London is out with that Cloudflare outage right now. So it's like all over the world. So I'm sorry that we can't. We need the internet for the demo there. It's really cool though. It was a very cool demo. We've done our optimizations, right? We're done with that. We now run super fast and we have like high quality. We got all our unit tests. We debugged all our things. We have the super fast profiling, optimizations that we did. So now it's time for code review. So we can either run code review with our colleagues, like I think most people do that today. You can also do Copilot code review if you wanted that. But regardless of how you do code reviews, doing like a sanity check before you involve other people might be nice, right? Right in Visual Studio, in the Git Changes window, I click the code review icon and then click through the generated review comments. And sure enough, I get suggestions for things I had totally missed, like the phrasing of this text and the accessible color contrast ratio. I can easily accept suggestions, tweak my code as needed, and ensure everything works as expected before I push up my change. How awesome is that? How many people can look at a CSS color value between the foreground and the background and know whether, and have thought about, oh, is that color contrast good enough from an accessibility perspective? My guess is that most people don't think about that. You think you get a bug at some point later on, and you have to go back and fix it, but we can catch stuff that we normally wouldn't catch. And so we save time for our team members that are gonna review our code, and we can have more confidence that our code that we commit has a higher quality. And when it's time to deploy, we can look at the new Azure MCP server, for instance. So an MCP server helps the AI in Visual Studio to understand new things that it wouldn't normally understand. So you can plug in all these different MCP servers like GitHub, and then it all of a sudden understands all your stuff about your issues and your repo and whatnot. And there's a new one for Azure. So it understands your Azure topology, it understands all those things, and you can deploy using it, maybe just parts of your app, maybe all of it. And it will even give you suggestions on where you can utilize Azure more efficiently in your code, like take advantage of things that makes your app run smoother or more efficiently or something like that in the cloud. A lot of us have to maintain old code bases. Sometimes it's internal tools written in like .NET 3.5 that we kind of just, limp along because they're internal tools, 500 people use them, and you've never been able to get funding to modernize it. And over the years, fewer and fewer people can maintain those older code bases. They don't know anymore like how does it work and all that. And the environment changed, and now you have to have maybe a VM that's like frozen in time so that you can even build it, right? This is kind of not that uncommon that we have these challenges. And what we really want is probably to modernize these apps before we have to rewrite them from scratch because there's no one left in the organization to maintain them, right? And so we build a new modernization agent. The thing is that we've tried for decades, not decades, at least a decade, to take an old code base and update it to like the latest .NET framework or .NET Core. The thing is that we've never been able to do it because every app is different. The dependencies are different, the project structures are different. There's just no one way to do it. AI is the one thing that allows us to solve this problem, to take an old code base and modernize it and move it on to .NET 10. So you get all the benefits of the new faster performance, all the modern tools, all that stuff, the CLI, whatever it is that you like about modern .NET, Visual Studio and all that, you can get. And instead of having to go to your manager and ask for, hey, can I get like 6 months to do this? And you get a big no. It's much easier to say, hey, can I get a day to do this? Right? Or a week? Something much smaller because all the heavy lifting is done by the AI modernization tool. So this is super, super exciting to move forward these old code bases that, we all have. We all have them somewhere. I hope you get a sense of our direction with AI here. This is not a bolted on experience. It is not something we try to push on you because we have a goal to sell you Copilot, but it's a way for us to solve the problems that already was there. We all have the same problems. The problems haven't changed, but we now have another tool in the toolbox to finally do something about a lot of these problems that we weren't simply able to fix before. So that's our kind of aim. This is for the professional developer, right? We're not going to rock your boat. We don't want to give you new things to learn in order to take advantage of this or to discover, oh yeah, I didn't know I could do it this way. Instead, we put it directly into the core of the things you are already doing. So that's the direction that you're going to see from Visual Studio going forward when it comes to AI. It's not AI for the sake of AI. There was like 1/3 of the room raised their hand when I said how many people tried Visual Studio 2026. A lot of people are a little bit hesitant to update to a new major version of Visual Studio. And I get it. I'm from the time when you always waited for the first service pack before you installed anything, whether it be Windows or Visual Studio or whatever. So I get it. We know this. Why do a lot of people wait to update Visual Studio? It's because a lot of the build tools, the tool sets around .NET or C++, you're not ready to get new versions of your compilers. So your build tools, because they've been coupled to the IDE. So when you update the IDE, it also updates your build tools, and all of a sudden you can't compile your app because you had like a certain version that had certain dependencies that no longer resolve. So what we've done for the first time is that we have decoupled the IDE from the platform, from the build tools. Yeah, so we separated the IDE from those build tools, which means you can update the IDE. You can be on the latest and greatest, get all your toolings, get all those performance benefits and the paper cut reductions that we talked about, but stay on whatever build tool versions that you got, your C++ tool sets. And then when you're ready to update those, you can just do that completely independent from the IDE. And here's the insiders channel. We used to have this thing called preview, and a lot of people use preview. We renamed that to insiders. It's not just a rename though. It's kind of a concept that's a little bit different, but the idea is similar, right? You get the newest features first in the insiders build. So that's where everything new we do is where we put that in. And once it's ready, it goes in the stable channel. So we have the insiders channel and we got the stable channel. You can install them side by side. You can have Visual Studio 2022 and you can have 2026 and you can have 2026 insiders all on the same box. They don't pollute each other. And so you can get, try things out, do the insiders, see what's coming before it lands in the stable release. Here's a little teaser. We just released 2026 last week. We also released 2026 Insiders, the next update to that. And it includes a WinForms expert. How many people here use WinForms? I had some hands up. Okay. So it's remarkably popular, WinForms, still to this day, and for good reasons. It's pretty fantastic. But it has some unique challenges, right? Because it has designer files. How do you do MVVM? Like, we kind of know how to do that in SAML. There are like some best practices around that. But how do you do that in WinForms? What about async await? Best practices can be really hard when it comes to WinForms. So how cool would it be if the WinForms team, the absolute experts in WinForms, if they cloned themselves and put themselves into Visual Studio, so whenever you open a WinForms project, they like wake up from their sleep and be like, oh, you want to, let me help you here. Let me be your peer programmer and help you out with all these best practices. And that's exactly what this is. So when you run Visual Studio in agent mode and you have a WinForms project open, you have the Copilot, you have the WinForms team sitting right next to you, helping you out with all those best practices. This is super exciting. We're going to have a lot more. We're going to have one specific just to anything C#. We're going to have one for C++. I'm kind of working on one for extensions. So if you want to write a Visual Studio extensions, you can have like a extensions expert helping you out. So it's basically teaching the AI all those things that, are like tribal knowledge sometimes, all those things. So that's very cool. You can get that today in the insiders. Here's another thing that you can get if you're doing any SAML. So co-hosting is something that we've been working on, and it's now in the insiders. So co-hosting allows us to share a bunch of stuff between the language service that's up and running and then the running app itself. Because you can imagine, Roslyn has to power up and understand. It has to basically compile almost in real time all your code whenever you make a change, right? To give you red squigglies and all that. It has to know that there was an error. So it kind of has to almost compile it. And so that information, why don't we share that with the runtime of the app and so on? And so that's kind of what co-hosting is. And so here's what it looks like when we start our IntelliSense here for the first time in a SAML file. It's already done. It just immediately loaded that IntelliSense, booted up what was required. Whereas in 2022 on the left, it kind of had to start that whole process over again, compile everything in order to give you that list. It does not have to do that with co-hosting. So huge performance benefits from just typing and using Visual Studio. Here's another one with hot reload. We always hear people are complaining about performance when it comes to hot reload. With co-hosting, here's what it looks like. Oh, here's what it looks like without co-hosting. So this is Visual Studio 2022 on your left. It's running here. And it's going to take a little while. We are going to be speeding this up here. Let's see. There it was, 38 seconds. So that's how long it took for a Blazor app to get that, this particular app, to get that change. And here it is in Visual Studio 2026. So that's more than 10x improvement for this particular code base. So huge performance benefits. This is all available in the insiders today. So if you have the opportunity to take the insiders, you get stuff like this and you get it before your colleagues. So you get the bragging rights. We're also going to change how we're going to release Visual Studio. We used to release it every quarter, like every 3 to 4 times a year is when we release Visual Studio. And we're going to change that now to every month. We just released last week. Already in December, we're going to have the first update. That WinForms agent is going to be, or the WinForms expert is going to be in the first release here in the first update in December. It's going to move from insiders to the stable channel. So every month, you're going to see a new drop of features. The hot reload co-hosting is coming in February. We got the coding agent, the GitHub coding agent. You can start that from within Visual Studio, so you can like kind of orchestrate different, background tasks running and all that type of stuff, and a bunch more. VisualStudio.com is where you go download that, so go check it out. And I just want to go through these real quick. .NET 10 was released last week. Bunch of improvements there. Really exciting release. It's an LTS, so it's time to update. C# 14. So many new language features that are just absolutely fun to use. So I can highly recommend C# 14. Aspire 13 was also released. And finally, SQL Server Management Studio 22 was released last week. The announcement is this week. We released it last week, but the announcement is this week at Ignite and SQL Pass in Seattle. And it's actually built on the Visual Studio shell. So SSMS is following the update patterns of Visual Studio now going forward. So they're on the latest. They're not going to be kind of falling behind like they were in the past when they ran out of, they've been, until last year, they ran on Visual Studio 2017. They were kind of behind a little bit, right? But now they're like locked into Visual Studio. They're now a SKU of Visual Studio. That's pretty cool. For those of you who haven't, go check out Visual Studio 2026. You will not be disappointed, I promise. Thank you very much. Have a great conference.